All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Thursday. Let's hop right back in where we were yesterday. So, I had you read this, good morning. I had you read this section of the textbook, right? And we looked at it and we said that we read about the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? And so, Khrushchev had ordered missiles to be installed in Cuba, right? So Cuba had a communist revolution under Fidel Castro. The communists were in power. Khrushchev was only too happy to make friends with Castro because now he had a communist ally basically living right next door to the United States, right? So he makes a deal with Castro to start building nuclear weapon launching facilities in Cuba, right? And so this is a huge deal for Khrushchev because he can get kind of the upper hand on the US, right? He can get nuclear weapons pointed right at the American cities and then he can try and make the US do what he wants, right? But unfortunately for him, we know that the US will fly a spy mission over Cuba and they will get early warning that Khrushchev is trying to do this, right? He's building the missile silos there. So here actually, I don't know if you can really see much, reading these sort of spy photos is kind of a skill, but this is actually one of the pictures that the U-2 took, and this is how the U.S. was able to figure out that indeed missile launch sites were being built on Cuba, right? So they had these spy images from the U-2 plane, and they, of course, had to decide what to do, right? And so we said that some of President John F. Kennedy's advisors wanted to simply, go in with a military response, right, and bomb the missile sites. I think in the video, Curtis LeMay said we should just, surround the island and if necessary, fry it. Yikes, that's pretty extreme, right? Some people were more diplomatic. They wanted to talk it out. But the people the advisors who kind of won the day were owlish, as they say, right? And so they wanted to use the military to kind of resist the Soviets, but also wanted to kind of talk it out, right? And so here the US ships do quarantine Cuba, and so they put battleships all the way around, designed to stop the Soviet ships from delivering the missiles, right? But again, this is a tense situation, right? Because nobody really knows what's going to happen, right? And what if the Soviet ships don't stop? What if they continue on? Should the US start shooting at them? Is the Soviet Union going to start shooting at the US? Are either one of those things going to trigger an all-out war? Nobody's quite sure, right? And so as the ships are kind of sailing from the Soviet Union to Cuba, everybody is kind of tense and on the edge of their seat because they don't know if, World War III is about to begin, right? And so while this is happening, of course, behind the scenes, we have some diplomatic negotiations, right? So Robert Kennedy, the U.S. Attorney General, and Anatoly Dobrinin, who's the Soviet ambassador, these guys sit down and talk it out, right? They negotiate a kind of peaceful end to this crisis here. And so again, Khrushchev agrees to remove the missiles from Cuba. The Jupiter missiles that are pointing at the Soviet Union, they're removed from Turkey. The US agrees not to invade Cuba, and everybody kind of gets to step back from the edge, right? And so again, we had a crisis. There was a lot of rhetoric from both Kennedy and Khrushchev about what will happen if anyone dares to defy them. But again, both leaders were able to step back, right? And so at the end of this, there were some lessons learned, right? One of which was that, holy cow, nuclear war is dangerous, right? And I don't know, people must have realized this earlier, but, it's super dangerous having two sides go head to head when both sides have enough weapons to basically destroy the entire country that they're fighting against, right? And in the video yesterday, we saw there was this idea of mutually assured destruction, right? So if you launch any missiles at us, we're going to launch all our missiles at you and completely destroy you. In which case, you would launch all your missiles at us and completely destroy us. So the idea is that any act of aggression by one side or the other would basically result in the complete destruction of both countries. And so that was mutually assured destruction, right? It is insane, right? But it was, this Cuban Missile Crisis just shows, how dangerous this situation is. And if it had gotten out of control, we might have seen nuclear weapons launched and, millions of people dying over, a pretty minor thing, right? But so again, the danger of nuclear war was kind of highlighted here. We also kind of learned that it was important for the USSR and the USA to talk to each other and to negotiate, right? And to communicate with each other. The UN, as you would think, I think read yesterday, was powerless, right? Because both Soviet Union and US are on the Security Council. Anything the Security Council decides, one or the other can veto. So the UN basically stood by and watched, right? And so it was really up to the US and the USSR to negotiate this out. So there's that. There's the value of diplomacy, right? The value of discussing and talking things out. After that, they set up a hotline, right? So after this, they set up a direct phone line from the White House to the Kremlin in Moscow, right? So if there's any confusion about what's going on, one side or the other can pick up the special red phone and say, hey, what are you guys doing, right? I'm picking up something on my radar. Is this a test? What's going on, right? Because again, the stakes are too high to make any mistakes, right? You can't have people getting confused and launching nuclear weapons because they think they're under attack when they're not, right? And so, communication is important here. But also the Americans feel that they have to increase their commitment to NATO and to Berlin as well. And so that kind of happens when Kennedy comes to power. Khrushchev asks he tells the Allies to get out of Berlin, and he increases his defense spending. And so Kennedy increases his defense spending as well, right? So again, they're kind of, they're still opposing each other, I guess, is what we can say. So again, this shows kind of the danger of not communicating and the danger of two sides that have massive numbers of nuclear weapons at this point. But it also begins nuclear non-proliferation treaties. And so I think in the video they talked about test bans that were signed very shortly after Cuban Missile Crisis. And after that, they start to draft non-proliferation treaties. So the idea that yes, we have nuclear technology, the US and the USSR, but we're not going to spread it around, right? We're not going to sell it to other countries. We're not going to help other countries develop this technology because it's too dangerous, right? And so lots of countries sign on to this. Canada is one of them, right? So we agreed not to develop nuclear weapons, and we never have. But some other countries choose not to, right? And as they mentioned in the video yesterday, China, of course, didn't like the idea of this and didn't sign on. I don't believe India signed on as well. Lots of other countries did, though, just in an attempt to limit this dangerous technology, right? Because again, these weapons are capable of destroying entire countries, right? And who has nuclear weapons? France, Britain. Yeah, let me just, I had a graphic about that. was, I think it was here. Permanent members of. Okay. Give me 1 second here. Oh, here. Um, this was my. Whoops, that's not right. Keynote. There. Yeah, this is the graphic I showed earlier. So this is not 1962, right? But this is current, and so you can see the U.S. still has a lot. There's Britain, like you mentioned, and France. Israel has them. Pakistan, India, lots in Russia, some in China, and some in North Korea. I don't know how those. I don't know how well those North Korean ones work, but they have them. So yeah, that's basically it. I think those are the countries that have it. I think Iran might be working on nuclear weapons, but it's not entirely clear what they're doing at the moment. But I think that's. These members are all. Oh, are they real numbers? Let's see. Let's see what it says here. Sources. Hans Christensen, U.S. State Department, Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. I would say that these are probably correct. They're probably correct. I mean, I think, the US and Russia have been open about their nuclear weapons program. India and Pakistan, probably yes. The UK and France are probably open. China's hard to tell. China's not always honest with the international community. So they clearly have nuclear technology. Whether they have that many or more is tough to know. North Korea is kind of the same, right? They're not honest with the international community either. We can spy on them and try and figure out what they have, but I'm not sure that that's, it's not perfect. It's the U.S. State Department, so I'm sure that they've done their research and, this is probably accurate or just accurate enough. But yeah, it's hard to tell sometimes. And again, other countries might be working on it as well. I think Iran is working on nuclear technology. Whether they make it into a nuclear weapon, we'll see, I guess. Almost all the countries who have it, they did what? Well, at this point, non-proliferation means that they won't spread it, right? So yeah, so if you sign on, if the United States signs on to it and, Mexico comes to them and says, hey, can you teach us how to do this? The US should say, no, we're not helping you develop this. Yeah. So yeah, so lots of these countries have signed on to agree not to test nuclear weapons anymore, and they've signed on not to spread that technology to other countries. And if your country doesn't have it, I think they've signed on not to develop it themselves. So yeah, Canada's agreed not to develop it, and we haven't. Okay. Right. Oh yeah, no, I don't want to do that yet. Hang on 1 second. Hang on 1 second. I was gonna start on China today, but I think I'd like to carry the Cold War story a little bit further before we do that. Before we get started with China. Okay, just 1 sec here. this is the right one. Okay. Nope, it's not the right one. Hang on. Is this the right one? Okay, 1 second. Technical difficulties here. Okay. I see what I did. Okay, so where are we now? We're 1962, right? And oh, hang on. Just having a rough time here. So we're there. We're in 1962, and what's going to happen? Of course, we know the Cuban Missile Crisis is going to happen in 1962. Just before that, Khrushchev will close the border between East and West Berlin, right? He'll start building the wall, and we saw a little bit of that yesterday. And then Khrushchev is going to step down, right? And that's what happened at the end of the video yesterday. So the Communist Party in the USSR has kind of had it with Khrushchev, right? They think that, you know, he totally bungled the Cuban Missile Crisis because he had the opportunity to really, you know, get a hand up on the Americans, and then he backed down. He was supposed to kind of reform agriculture in order to sort of increase productivity. That didn't work either, but of course, it never works for the Soviet Union. They never managed to increase their productivity, but still, he doesn't do it. You know, it's been embarrassing that he had to put up the Berlin Wall just to keep people in East Germany and East Berlin. That's embarrassing. And so the Communist Party kind of forces him to step down, right? Which at the end of the video yesterday, he thought, hey, isn't this great? You know, nobody would have ever suggested that Stalin stepped down, right? He would have made them disappear. But now, you know, we're a better party because the party can say, look, Khrushchev, I think you should step down, and he'll step down, right? It's not, you know, it's not so bad as it was under Stalin. But either way, Khrushchev is going to step down. John F. Kennedy is going to be assassinated, right? He's going to be in a parade in Dallas, Texas, and Lee Harvey Oswald is going to shoot him and assassinate him. And so we're going to wind up with some new presidents and new leaders of the Soviet Union in this kind of next phase of the Cold War, right? So going into about 1964, 1965, you know, we're going to get new players, right? New people in the mix. So I have a little more of the video for you to watch, but I want you to read a couple more pages and answer a few more questions, and then we'll go back to the video, okay? So the pages are in Microsoft Teams as they usually are. And so I'll let you get to reading, and then we will discuss, okay? 200, okay. Good. That's correct. Oh yeah, I've got some time. Okay, people, ready? I know that's kind of a big chunk to read, but maybe we can attack a little bit of it, okay? So, so Khrushchev is gone, right? He is deposed. He's sort of kicked out of office by the Communist Party, and they replace him with Leonid Brezhnev. I don't know if I have a good picture of him. He's kind of he's not a handsome man, but anyway. Um, Brezhnev is replaces Khrushchev, and he's got two kind of main problems. What are his two main problems? Challenges at home and challenges within the Soviet bloc. Okay, so what are the challenges at home? Yeah, so at home within the Soviet Union, Brezhnev's got some issues, right? There are economic problems, right? We still hear about agricultural underproduction, right? So the Soviets are kind of dumping all kinds of money into agriculture. They're dumping money into subsidizing food prices. What does that mean? No. So basically what the government is doing here is that it's kind of paying for part of people's food, right? So let's say if I make bread, okay, I have a bread factory, and in order to stay in business, I need to sell my bread for $5 a loaf, okay? Now, most people would say, wow, that's a lot of money for one loaf of bread. And so what the government is doing is they're stepping in and they're giving me money, right? And so they're saying, look, Mike, I know you need to sell your bread for $5 a loaf, but that'll cause catastrophe in society. Nobody can afford it. So we're going to give you, for every loaf of bread you sell, we're going to give you $3. That way you can sell bread to the public at $2 per loaf. Okay? So the government is basically giving me money so that I can keep my prices low and so that the people will be happy and they'll be able to afford food. So the Soviet Union is kind of buying a bunch of food on the open market, and it's kind of pouring money into agriculture, and it's pouring money into subsidizing the prices to keep them down. So just feeding people is costing a lot of money in the Soviet Union because it's not working effectively, right? They mention in the textbook that on these collective farms, people are just not really motivated to work hard, right? Because why bother, right? Doesn't matter. The state will feed you anyway. You don't make any extra money. You can work harder, but you won't make any more. And so people kind of just do a half-ass kind of job, right? And so, but interestingly, you'll read that in their own gardens, like in their private plots of land, they're really producing a lot of food, right? 25% of the food is coming from people's little gardens, right? So people are working very hard on their own stuff, and then on the state farm, they're kind of whatever, right? So production is low. Again, people are not necessarily going hungry, but there's lots of empty shelves, right? Like look on, it's on the second page of the PDF, but it's page 201. And you can see this poor Soviet woman there, you know, shopping for, I guess, meat. Actually, let me see what it says here. It says, I think that's the dairy section. It says молочные продукты, so milk products. So I think that's the dairy section. So she should be buying butter or cheese or milk. But as you can clearly see, there's none of that stuff, right? None of it is available. And again, this is going to be a more and more common sight for people in the Soviet Union. They're going to go to the store, and the store's not going to have anything. You're going to have to line up, and maybe you'll get something and maybe you won't, right? So there's going to be food shortages. What else do they say about the standard of living of people in the Soviet Union at this point? They say something about, this is almost the 1970s, and yet their standard of living is similar to where Americans were in the 1920s. So, in terms of like standard of living and sort of comfort, the USSR is about 50 years behind, right? People in the Soviet Union in 1970 are basically living in 1920 in terms of the sort of comforts and sort of quality of life they have. That's pretty far behind, right? And again, why are they so far behind, would you say? Why are they so far behind in technology and just like consumer goods, right? Like things that like vacuum cleaners and stoves and fridges and cars, right? Why is the Soviet Union so far behind? I don't know if they say it in the text. You might have to say again. Where's the money going? Yeah. So yeah, their economy is underperforming, right? They're not really making a lot of money. They're not able to feed themselves, and so they have to buy a bunch of extra food. And even though the economy is underperforming, they're still spending as much money as the US is on their weapons, right? And so basically all of their money is going into weapons and foreign debt and just trying to like feed the people, right? And so, yeah, some of the things that, in the 1970s, having a vacuum cleaner is normal, right? Everyone's got a vacuum cleaner. In the 1970s, having a car, everyone's got a car, right? It's not a big deal. But in the Soviet Union, these things are scarce, right? They are a big deal because again, all of the money is going into weaponry, and their economy is not operating at the same level as the United States, right? It's not producing as much. Um, yeah. Okay. So Brezhnev's got problems at home. What are his problems in Soviet bloc? Say again. There's some problems. Mm. Right. So shocker, um, the Soviet Union is finding that their kind of brand of socialism or communism isn't working, right? They're not making enough money to support their people. And then again, shocker, that same form of communism or socialism isn't working for Poland either, right? Poland is struggling to keep food prices down, right? Their government is subsidizing food prices as well. They're borrowing money from the Soviet Union to do it. They're borrowing money from Western banks to do it, right? And so they're kind of they're financially struggling as well. But in this case, the people are upset, right? The people are upset, and who wouldn't be, right? Um, yeah, so he's got all kinds of challenges within the Soviet bloc as different countries want more independence, and he's got problems at home because, again, the economy is underperforming, right? Okay, let's take a little break there, and then when we come back, we will talk about. Well, we'll talk about the other. Oh, I guess we've covered that. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about Czechoslovakia and about Poland, okay? So let's take a little break. Okay, so Brezhnev has two challenges, we said, right? He's got stuff inside the country and stuff outside the country, which is basically everything, right? So Soviet economy is not working very well. They're kind of losing money. They're trying to keep up with the arms race with the US. And it's difficult, right? Agriculture is underproducing. People's quality of life is stuck in the 1920s. It's pretty grim, right? And similarly, he's got to struggle with the Eastern Bloc countries, right? So countries like Poland and Czechoslovakia and Romania, they want more independence, right? They want to be able to make their own decisions independent of Moscow, right? So he's got to somehow deal with these guys, but he's also got to, improve his own struggling country, right? Guess we don't need that countdown there. Let's get rid of that. So 1, 2, 4, and 5. Okay, so we've kind of covered number 1 and 2. Let's ask this here. What's going on in Czechoslovakia? So they elect a new party secretary, Alexander Dubček, right? And what's he proposing? What does he want to have? What does he want to change in Czechoslovakia? Or what changes does he want to make? He wants to get what? Right. Yeah, well, and what did you say? Oh, right. Okay. So, yeah, they're kind of opening up. They're kind of looking at a bunch of liberal changes, right? So, changes to how the economy works, changes to how they interact with the Soviet Union, how they interact with other countries, right? Their diplomatic relations. Dubček is also, well, not only is he proposing it, but he starts to do it, right? He gives freedom of the press, right? Now the press can say whatever they want, right? He starts to open up the borders and allow people to travel from Czechoslovakia, right? What else is he talking about here? Censorship of the press. He's going to get rid of censorship of the press. He's going to allow non-communist organizations to form, right? So we might actually have other political parties in Czechoslovakia other than the Communist Party, right? He guarantees free speech, which again is something you don't usually have in a communist country, or at least not in the Soviet Union. And so all of these things are kind of threatening to the Soviet Union, and how does the Soviet Union respond? Yeah. So they respond with the Red Army, right? And so look at the numbers though, right? They send in 250,000 troops, right? With 250,000 as a backup. That's half a million Red Army soldiers entering Czechoslovakia, not to mention planes and tanks and all kinds of things, right? So they mount a massive invasion. They kick out Alexander Dubček. They put in, what's his name, Gustav Husak. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right. They put in Gustav Husak, who is, again, loyal to Moscow and a hardcore communist, right? So again, just like Hungary, Czechoslovakia pushes too far. They want too many freedoms, and the Soviet Union responds with the Red Army, right? And the tanks and the planes and the soldiers. What's going on in Poland? This is kind of a long story because they take it from 19 1970 to 1980 here. What's that? Yeah, yeah. They're not. They don't beat Poland here. We said that Poland is struggling with some of the same financial problems that the Soviet Union is struggling with. Let me just see, what's the actual question here? What is the actual question? Oh, I guess it's describe, oh, it's not. Okay, not an official question, but let's describe Poland's economic difficulties, right? So we know that, what do we know about Poland's economy here? What do we know about Poland's economy? Let me see. Say that again? Yeah, I guess, well, at this point, Poland is kind of struggling a little more economically than politically, right? So, again, Poland is subsidizing food just like the Soviet Union is, right? Trying to keep prices down. But they're also, their agricultural sector isn't working very well. They're kind of losing money to foreign debts. And for a while, they're okay, right? Because the things that they export from their country, like coal, prices, world prices are high, right? So Poland is able to kind of keep themselves afloat because the things that they sell to the world are worth a lot of money, right? But then when the price of coal and things goes down, suddenly Poland is short of cash, right? They can't subsidize prices anymore. And so when they stop subsidizing prices, what do they say? The price for meat goes up 60%? Holy cow, right? So prices go up, the people revolt, right? There are labor strikes, right? People start to stop working in order to get either better working conditions or lower food prices, right? And so there's a few of these, but there's something that very interesting that happens in Poland in this period. And it happens here first at Gdansk shipyards, right? So these are workers who build ships, right? They build large boats. And let me just see the date here. So it's 1976, okay? And the shipyard workers are having a strike, right? Because they want better working conditions and higher wages. And they want something very important. They want the right to be recognized as a union, as a labor union, okay? What's a labor union? Do you know what a labor union is? Labor union? So labor union is where everybody who works in a certain area, either for a certain company or for a certain, in a certain profession, they all join together and they negotiate their wages and their benefits and their working conditions as a group, okay? So here in BC, for instance, BC has a teachers federation. They have a teachers union. And so the union negotiates with the provincial government, and the union figures out how much teachers are paid, how much time they get off, what are their working conditions, what are their benefits, all that kind of stuff. So instead of individual teachers trying to negotiate their salary, everybody in the union gets the same thing, and the union negotiates with the government on behalf of everybody, okay? Except for me, because I'm not paid by the government, because this is a private school, so for me that doesn't count. But for teachers in kind of normal public schools, they're part of that union. And if you imagine, unions can be a good thing, because if I'm a factory owner, right, and Yoya comes to me one day and he says, you know what, Mike, you're not paying me enough to work in your factory. I want a 10% raise, right? And if I don't want to give it to Yoya, I can just say, yeah, well, I'm not paying you 10% more, Yoya. There's the door. Out you go, right? And I don't have to negotiate with you, right? Because you're just one person. But if all of the factory workers unite in a union and Yoya is their representative, Yoya comes to me and says, look, we all think we're being underpaid. We want a 10% raise. And if you don't want to negotiate, we're not coming to work tomorrow. And I mean, nobody's coming to work tomorrow, right? And so again, as a factory owner, I can't have everybody not show up to work, right? I can't if I fire Yoya, I can replace him easily, but I can't replace all of my factory workers, in a short term, right? So I've got to negotiate with Yoya if he's the representative of the union, right? You have more leverage, right? You have more power in a union rather than just one person, right? One person comes to me and asks for a raise, forget it, get out, right? One person comes to me that represents everybody and says, hey, we want a raise. Now I got to talk, right? I got to negotiate, because I can't fire everybody. And so here, the shipyard workers are trying to do that. They're trying to form a union so that they can negotiate with the government for better working conditions, better pay, right? But the government doesn't recognize them as a union. And so they have a strike here in 1976, and they hold out, they keep striking until the Polish government finally says, okay, you can be a union, we will negotiate with you as a single group of shipyard workers. Does that make sense? You understand so far? Okay. The interesting thing that happens after that is that the Polish government also gives that right to other unions, okay? So maybe electricians get their own union. Maybe police officers get their own union. Maybe teachers get their own union, okay? But then something really interesting happens. All these little unions of different, professions and different things, they all join together into one big union, and they call it solidarity, right? And solidarity means holding together, right? A group holding together. And so now, instead of a bunch of small unions, Poland has one big union, right? And so remember when Yoya came to ask me for a raise and I said, forget it, get out of here? Then when he came back as a representative of all of the workers in the factory, I kind of had to take him seriously, right? I had to negotiate with him. But imagine Yoya comes back to me, and imagine I'm the Polish government, and he says, look, I represent 40% of the workers in Poland, and this is what we want. And if we don't get it, we're not coming into work Monday morning. That's a big problem, right? If 40% of Poland doesn't go to work on Monday morning, you're going to have chaos, right? You're going to have no firefighters, you're going to have no teachers, you're going to have no police officers. People aren't going to be working in stores or government offices or driving buses or anything, right? You can shut the country down with a union that big, right? So now the Polish government has a little bit of a problem, right? Because these unions that they gave power to have now united, and now they've got a lot of power, right? You can't have 40% of the country not coming into work on Monday. The country will stop working, right? So the solidarity kind of uses this to kind of negotiate more power until we get a new communist secretary in Poland. That's that Jaruzelski guy. And so he's not interested in negotiating with Solidarity, and he knows they're super powerful, right? And so what does he do in 1981? He basically shuts the country down and throws them all in jail and makes solidarity illegal, right? So the union actually gets so powerful that the government dissolves it, basically, for now. We'll come back to it. Solidarity will return. But at the time, again, the union became too big, too powerful, and the government shut it down. Their leader here, who you read about, Lech Walesa, Lech was thrown in jail, right, for a few years. Again, solidarity was made illegal, and yeah, the government kind of shut the whole thing down. But never fear, solidarity will return. Let's see, one more thing. 7? Oh, okay. Oh, we're good. All right. So I think we've got just the right amount of time left. We'll watch a little more of the video that we were watching yesterday, and it'll cover the stuff that we've just read about. For online people, it is in Microsoft Teams, and it's called Class 38, the Cold War, I think. And so it'll show you that section that you need to see, okay? So I will, I'm gonna end the live stream now just to kind of save space. Watch the rest of the video, the Class 38 Cold War video in Microsoft Teams, and then we'll see you here tomorrow, okay? So yeah, go watch it and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.